Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, a podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Rebekah Farmer at Tailored Keto Health has overcome chronic pain, severe autoimmune disorders, mood disorders, chronic Lyme, chronic CDiff, all through Paleo, Ketogenic, and now carnivore diets and other lifestyle interventions. Rebekah is returning to the show today. If you missed part one, definitely go check it out because we go deep into her inspiring and incredible story in that one. I had a great time having Rebekah on, and she has over 15 years of experience with paleo and ketogenic lifestyles, over 2 years carnivore, and extensive knowledge on all things health and fitness. And she's working on improving those skills with certifications through the Health Coach Institute. Welcome back to the show, Rebekah.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah. So just would love to hear what has life been like for you lately? How are things going?
Honestly, this is just like It's a Wonderful Life. I think of that all the time. I feel like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life, where he has a second chance. And to be honest, I just have so much joy and gratitude. It's still kind of hitting me, everything that I've come through and that God has delivered me from, and I'm excited. I'm growing, getting stronger, helping other people, a lot of other people with major things as well, it's such a blessing. It's such an exciting thing to do. And so, yeah, I've just been, every day I wake up with a smile on my face.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear you say that because I know you've been through so much, Rebekah, and you deserve to have those wins and that exciting life to wake up to every day. When did you move from like surviving and focusing on trying to like get better and just being super, I don't know what the right word is, but like moving from that place of hardship to, okay, now I'm healed. Now I'm feeling great. Let me open up and try to help as many people as possible. When did that start to switch for you?
I was helping people already, when we had our first talk, but for me, I was still dealing with the trauma. And I think that anyone who's dealing with trauma, it takes time. It kind of comes in waves. But definitely after visiting with my mom over the summer, that was the first time I had seen her since I moved away, and we were not in contact for a very long time. My relationship with my family was broken. It was horrible. And she was just in tears, and we got away to the beach for a couple of days, and my entire family was like, oh my goodness, you've come back from the dead. And after that, I really continued with the trauma process. I think that was a big part of it. And I started writing a book as well, which has been surprisingly a lot. Like it's very therapeutic for me to put all of the stuff in writing, but I have to do it slowly. I've been, I was dealing with nightmares and just talking about what I've been through, but it is a healing process. So I can't really pinpoint one specific point because I really have had this joy on the inside for a while now, but it just seems like every day it gets better and better. And now I am very unashamed. I think near the beginning, I was a bit more timid because to be honest, I was nervous that I would get sick again. Very scary. And that's how it happened the first time with chronic Lyme. It hit me hard and my central nervous system just went haywire. So, part of me was a bit hesitant, but now I've realized, what if it all happened again? I'm okay with that. Like there is nothing on this earth. There is no man on this earth that I fear. And I'm finally grounded in something greater than myself. And what I've been through is the only way that I have been able to be grounded. So that's sort of a long-winded answer.
That's amazing. That's so fantastic to hear and such a great perspective. I'm really impressed, Rebekah. And shifting it over a little bit to the diet. Sorry, you might hear my dog whining a little bit in the background. How has the carnivore diet, what does your diet look like now? And how has that changed for you over time?
Yeah. So when I started out carnivore, I was doing like a 4 to 1 fat to protein ratio for a while. And I'm not recommending that to anything that I mentioned here. I'm not recommending it to anyone because it's different for each person. Totally different. Depends on your level of fat adaptation, your hormones. I won't get into that. But I started very high fat, and then I slowly transitioned to 2 to 1. And then I got into 1 to 1, and I was like, I'll never go below that. But I was feeling so fantastic, and I ran some labs. My labs looked fantastic. So I decided I want to get shredded at least once before I turn 40. So I contacted Sean Baker and I asked him about his Get Shredded program, and I checked it out. And basically it's a high protein thing. And for someone, there was a time where I didn't tolerate more than 30 grams of protein per day without my blood sugar spiking, like well above 130 or something like that. So this was a little nerve-wracking, but my blood sugars have been so stable for a long time now. So I tried it, and I was extremely surprised with the results. So what that looked like for me was very high protein and around 50 grams of fat per day, probably 250 grams of protein minimum. And my blood sugar has been more stable doing this than the high fat. It was always stable even with the high fat, but it just speaks to the level of healing that I've been through and the level of insulin sensitivity that I have now. So it's been really interesting, and it's a totally different sensation of fullness. And then I will mention that I've been doing fat refeed days, and I have actually incorporated an extra fat refeed day because I started losing too much weight. I don't want the number on the scale to go down as quickly as it has been. And it's all fat, and I have actually gained muscle while doing this. So this is something that, wow, I've seen other people doing, and I have always just assumed like, okay, well, you're that special person that can get away with pretty much anything. You probably have good genetics. But me, I was 69 pounds in May of 2018, and now I'm building muscle and losing fat, and I feel great. I'm not hungry. And I've been going higher in fat. It's usually higher than 50 grams. It's just really high protein. And I'm pairing that with lifting heavy, of course. So I eat a bunch of fish and turkey usually. And it's great. It's actually really, really surprising how much I enjoy it. And the satiety that I have with protein is phenomenal. I'm surprised that my hormones are not suffering. My sleep isn't suffering. My blood sugar isn't spiking. So again, this is not something that I would recommend to most people or any of my clients unless they're looking to get ripped and they don't have any other underlying problems. But it's been really cool to see that I feel limitless. I feel like this is something that I never would have considered before. I would have called it so dumb, seriously.
Yeah.
But it's been really cool. And again, it's just, I want to encourage people to realize that once you heal and you take care of those foundational things, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And how high did you say your protein is and your fat on your higher protein days?
So at its lowest, my protein is 250. My fat varies between 50 grams to 100 grams.
Wow.
And yeah, so I started out with just 50 grams of fat because that's what the Get Shredded Guide by Sean Baker recommends, along with the fat refeed days, to keep your hormones upregulated, which is really cool, really smart. But like I said, I was losing too much weight with that. So I've been eating carnivore brownies every night, and that has a good amount of egg yolks and beef suet. But I fill up with protein first. So I don't even track specifically anymore. I can really get a feel for where my body is at and how much energy I have floating around in my bloodstream. And I can just manipulate that for my own goals.
That's awesome. Super interesting. And I want to get to the carnivore brownies piece. But a couple of things you said that I want to pick apart. One, seems like the polar opposite of what you've done in the past. So it's really cool to hear you say how like it's changed for you and you've healed. And I think I want to echo the point you're making about not necessarily recommending this for people. I think it takes time to get adapted to the carnivore diet and to enjoy it. And I often say carnivore is not a weight loss diet, especially not at first. So you want to spend the first few months like getting adapted, enjoying the food, getting your body used to the food. And during that time, you might not lose a lot of weight. You might actually gain weight if you're under muscled and then once you're in a healthier place, then you can think about making some of these tweaks. But if you're saying, I'm going to try the carnivore diet for 2021, here we go, new me, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Like, I think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So I want to highlight that nuance.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also to add on to that, remember for anyone listening where I came from. I've gained 65 pounds, actually over 65. I got up to almost 150 pounds at one point. And that's when I checked my labs. Everything looked good. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to play around with this. And honestly, like I'm not going to let my weight fall below 125. I could probably go lower, but even if I don't get shredded, at least it's just fun to try. And it's really cool to be able to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. That's another thing that I thought was really complicated. And I'm not a professional bodybuilder. I've just taken up the sport and I'm experimenting. But yeah, I do definitely feel that many people think it's just that simple. Eat the meat that you love and enjoy as much as you want, and the scale should go down. It doesn't work that way. And calories still matter. And, it does seem to work for a lot of people that way because I believe that this way of eating supports leptin sensitivity more than any other. So that's when your body tells you when you're full, properly. So for that reason alone, a lot of people lose weight naturally, but there are a lot of people with hormonal issues. And if your leptin is already jacked up and you're addicted to sugar and you're not fat adapted, or your adrenals, there are so many variables that we should really dedicate the time to healing, not just because it's you have to take that step before losing weight, but because it matters so much more to be healthy and to feel healthy. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing this approach, Rebekah? And also, had you tried a higher protein version of carnivore prior?
I have not tried a higher protein version of carnivore. No, never. I've always had lower amounts of protein, and the highest that I would do was probably 1 gram of protein per pound of my lean body mass or body weight. And so I've been doing this since the fall. But I will say that I have taken breaks with it.
Yeah.
And because I just listen to my body.
Yeah,
I really
smart.
do. I mean, like I just told you before we started recording, I ate 2 sticks of butter on Christmas. And it wasn't because I was, vegging out and by myself. It was because I was really craving it. And this tends to happen around a full moon, which is my cycle, and women's hormones are more complicated than men. So it's very, very clear when I need to eat at a surplus and I need to eat a ton of fat. And so it does look a lot different than the way Sean was doing it or recommended it, just because I want to protect my hormones. I want to keep feeling great. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think both for people who have a lot of weight to lose and leaner individuals who are just trying to get shredded, as you put it, incorporating periods of maintenance is really, really smart. Like you can't just lose all. First of all, like maintenance is the end goal anyway. Like you can't always keep losing weight in perpetuity. Obviously you die, but at some point you need to learn the skill of maintaining a certain figure and body weight and eating the amount of food you need to stay happy and healthy there. So why not in your weight loss journey, take 6 weeks to lose weight and then 3 or 4 weeks to maintain and then 6 weeks to lose weight, et cetera. And not those exact timeframes, obviously, but I think it's so important to practice maintenance, both for the skill of it, but also for the physiology. And to your point, you're listening to your body. It helps reset your hormones. It helps your body get comfortable, and you're less likely to lose muscle that way. There's just a lot of smart. It sounds like you're taking a very smart and intelligent approach about that.
Honestly, that's why I did this. It's less about getting shredded. I might never get shredded. Honestly, like seriously. I'm okay with that. It's just more about seeing where I can take my body, and it's pretty amazing. And so that being said, I didn't have a goal. Like I said, it's before I turned 40. I have forever to experiment with this. So I took my time, and it makes so much more sense for people to really go slow. And like you said, the goal is maintenance. So it makes sense to incorporate those maintenance days. And I also think it's really important to try to keep your body from adapting to any type of, diet that you're doing that's not a long-term thing. And so for me, in my head, I was thinking, if I go extreme with this and I keep fat super, super low, I'm going to run the risk of stressing out my body or taxing my adrenals. And I would rather get away with burning more calories naturally. I would rather keep my basal metabolic rate up. So what I've been doing is more like a reverse diet. And that's really what I wanted to experiment with. And it's very effective. And I kind of wanted to prove to myself that no one needs to starve themselves. And my maintenance is still very, very high. And when I eat those fat refeed days, I'm still losing weight. Like I'll lose weight the next day and be like, dang. And that's because that would not be happening if my hormones were not in a good place.
Yeah, really interesting. And can you talk about making gains on the carnivore diet and what that means to you with your new diet and how you think about it for your clients as well?
Yeah. Well, number one, the biggest gain is health, and finding a way of eating that is sustainable and doesn't feel like a diet and restores your relationship with food. Health is the biggest gain. And once that happens, you can play around with the aesthetics and physical gains. So for me, I started out with just body weight exercises. I could barely hold my own head up. in 2019. And as I got stronger, I incorporated more resistance. And resistance is really a relative term. So I didn't have to pick up weights for like 6 or 7 months, because I had more to work with, but I continued to grow. And I think I would have set myself back if I tried to go too fast and push it too hard. I've also been really learning a lot about proper form and the muscle mind connection. It's so important that you know that, because I could have just been wasting so much time in the gym if I weren't actually focusing on doing things the right way. And there are just these little things that make all the difference. Like I warm up my core every time before I go to squat, and I take off my shoes. I do it barefoot. And they're just these little intricacies that make all the difference and make it so much more effective. So that's been really cool to learn. It's just a fun hobby. That's what it is. Going to the gym is my playtime, and I love challenging things. And I've gained, like I said, 65 healthy pounds, and most of I'm around 20% body fat right now, which is a healthy level. So it really looks different from person to person. I used to do so much cardio, not because I was trying to lose weight, but because it was the only type of exercise I felt like was therapeutic to me. And I was kind of intimidated to lift weights. And it's like, I don't know what an Arnold press is, but, I didn't need a trainer. It's just a matter of Googling it and reading about it and then executing it. So for anyone who's intimidated and who wants to gain muscle, it's, don't be hard on yourself. It's really fun, and it's worth it. Feeling stronger it's so exciting and refreshing. I mean, my back is very strong. I've always had painful back and neck, and having those muscles properly engaged now in my scapula, it changes my life. It is so awesome. And I love being able to move heavy things. If I get a big, heavy box of frozen meat, no problem. I can pick that up in another one. And it's like, man, I used to have to ask people to do it for me. I would literally ask the UPS guy, can you please bring this inside my house? Because I can't do it. I'm stronger. I can be there for my niece and actually play with her. I have energy, and I can pick her up and not break my neck. Just these little things that it's not about the way I look. And I will say, full disclosure, I'm really proud of my butt. I've never had a butt. And I had someone tell me once, that my structure was so that I would probably never have a butt. And ever since then, I was like, I bet if I put in the work, I could. And it's true. Do some hip thrusts. But seriously, it's about how I feel and being strong. And I feel like before, I was not a person that I couldn't help people as much. And even thinking about, okay, what if I get married and have children someday? I need to be able to pick them up and move things and, be strong. So it's really awesome and empowering. And like I said, it's a great hobby. It's so good for my mind. It's my therapy.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. And I love the way you took that question and talked about gains, not just in terms of in the gym, but health and knowledge and ability and life purpose. There's so many different ways you can have gains.
Yeah.
So I really like how you expanded that question. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Rebekah, that I thought you brought up on Kelly Hogan's show that I think is super interesting. And I don't think we've spent enough time talking about it on part one. The fact that many people think you had an eating disorder. Can you talk about that? Like why and maybe the frustrations around that?
Yeah. So I had a chronic CDiff infection. CDiff is a bad bacteria that takes over the good bacteria in your gut. And I believe that I had it for years before I was actually tested with it. Because at one point I was eating 6,000 calories a day. That's when I got my fitness pal. It was like, I have to track now. And I was still losing rapid amounts of weight. And I would go to the doctor and they would say, well, you're doing the keto diet. Of course you're losing weight. And I was like, yeah, but I'm eating enough. So I was accused of having an eating disorder many times by doctors, even a neurologist, a children's neurologist who recommended keto for epilepsy. I went to them because I was having seizures. Actually, Dr. Westman referred me to them. And they accused me of having an eating disorder as well. And I was really upset because it's like, I'm coming to you to help me deal with these seizures, non-epileptic seizures. And you're just telling me I have an eating disorder because I'm doing the diet that you recommend. And my family also thought that I had an eating disorder, and I ended up in the hospital in the wrong place, and a nurse there petitioned to have me sent to the eating disorder unit, which I didn't even know they could do that in the hospital. And they told my mom, who was with me at the time, you can't believe anything that your daughter says. She has an eating disorder and her stomach is too small to digest food. She needs a feeding tube. So my family was terrified for my life. And they told me, if you try to check yourself out, you won't have a roof over your head. You'll have to find somewhere else to live. And that was really hard. And that was a really dark time. And this is primarily what I'm writing my book about, was that experience. But it really messed with my psyche in there. And I actually came out of there with an eating disorder. It was that, I was there for an entire month. I was not allowed to stand. It was considered exercise. And I was told that if I had problems with gluten, that it was all in my head. And it was really, really rough. And I came out of there very traumatized. And so I continued to lose weight again after gaining 15 pounds in the hospital. And side note, I'll say that weight was not good weight, because we were fed 75% carbohydrates, and it did not go on as well as it has with the carnivore diet. And it's all hormonal, of course. So I lost that weight again. And so that's when they finally tested me for CDiff, and it came back positive. I had 3 fecal transplants after being resistant to all of the antibiotics, and still had the CDiff. So that brings me to my 3rd emergency room back to back in May of 2019, where they told me, you're going to have to remove your colon and be hooked up to a feeding tube. And at that time, I was actually asking them to put me in an eating disorder unit, because I could not refeed on my own to save my life. I was involuntarily throwing up due to ulcerative colitis. I had gastroparesis, diverticulitis. It was very painful to eat. And I had developed a true binge eating disorder, because the sight of my own emaciated body was extremely triggering. And it was just ingrained in my mind, my job, I have to eat like it's my job. So it wasn't like what you might imagine when you hear binge eating disorder. It was like, I'm desperate to live my life and be a normal person, and this is what everyone is telling me to do. So I was very, very systematic with it. I would put a towel on my couch because I knew I'd be sitting there eating food for hours. I would just try to slowly eat food and not vomit. That was my goal, is to just keep it down. So it was never to lose weight, but it was quite the opposite. And I was triggered. And I went to Panera one really bad night, and I got all of the gluten, and I told myself it must all be in my head. I wanted that to be the truth. I wanted it to be that simple. Because if it were all in my head, then I could eat like a quote unquote normal person and gain the weight and live a normal life and restore my relationship with my family. And, so I was open about whatever they wanted to tell me, but they could not treat me in an eating disorder unit again because the CDiff, they had to hold me in isolation. So, in that emergency room, I spoke with the dietitian privately, and I explained pretty much everything that I had been through. And I said, please let me eat only meat. So she put me in touch with the chef in the kitchen at the hospital, and they were sending up multiple entrees of meat, butter, and hard-boiled eggs. And I was hoarding that in that room. And I was throwing away the stuff that they were sending up with the permission of the dietitian. And then after a week of doing that, she told the doctor. But almost immediately, the involuntary throwing up stopped and my blood sugars stabilized. I was no longer having hypos and getting these glucagon shots, which suck. I dreaded those glucagon shots. My electrolytes stabilized, and I gained 4 pounds in there. And so the doctor made her rounds, and she was like, we can't hold you here anymore. You're too stable for us to tell anything to insurance. And so the dietitian told the doctor, and the doctor told me to go home and continue with my weird all meat diet. I still had to work through the binge eating behavior, the habit that I had picked up, but it was very easy, very, very easy. And I needed to eat at a surplus anyways. So I actually made it hyper palatable in the beginning. I allowed myself to eat dairy. I used some spices. I couldn't even eat steak for like the first 5 months because it was too filling. So cutting out all of those keto treats that I had, and they weren't like dirty. I'm not talking about like what you go and buy it at the store, like homemade keto treats that are fantastic for some people, but not me. I was addicted. And as soon as I cut those out and filled up on animal fat and protein, I didn't have that impulsive behavior. And I was comforted because I was finally gaining weight. Just that 4 pounds it was a miracle. So I just kept it up, and I knew it would be a long road, but if I stayed consistent with it, then it would work because there was nothing else that could put weight on me.
Wow. That's incredible. And I can't imagine the frustration with people falsely accusing you of having an eating disorder and knowing in your heart of hearts that you don't.
Yeah.
It's just like such a tough change in identity.
Yeah. And I kind of just shared a long story and didn't even address what you were asking me to. My heart goes out to people who are misunderstood. And after what I went through in the hospital, I had already learned to let things go. I had such a grudge with my family, and it got really toxic. And that just made things worse for me to hold on to that. So honestly, that experience taught me to not take things personally. I know my truth. I am accountable to God and no human being. So like Michaela Peterson made a post, and there were a lot of comments I saw that were like, oh man, so glad you recovered from anorexia. Just assuming. And, it was pretty clear in the caption. So it's like, you're not even reading for 12 seconds, and you're just going to assume that anyone who's thin has anorexia. So that was frustrating, but I wasn't frustrated at the people. I was just frustrated at the situation. And I think that, I also think that more people have eating disorders than we talk about. And I think it might always be that way. Because when I was in the hospital unit, yes, some of them had anorexia and they just wanted to be thin, but a lot of them came from it was interesting to hear about their backgrounds and where they were coming from. Lifestyles that are just a lot of pressure, like a gymnast or someone with high anxiety, it's not like people just wake up and they're like, I want to be stick thin and unsightly and unhealthy. There are deep reasons why these things happen. And I think that trauma would be a better word for it, better diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has been incredible, Rebekah. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing. I think it's really going to help other people.
My pleasure.
Shifting to a little lighter hearted topic, can we talk about some of the carnivore recipes you've been making lately?
Yeah.
Ice cream, brownies, blondies. How do you come up with these? And talk about like some of the ingredients and how you fit it into a carnivore lifestyle.
Yeah. So the ice cream is, my version of ice cream is more ketovore. It does use MCT oil, but it uses pure C8 MCT oil, which does not contain salicylates. So that's the reason that we avoid coconut oil or MCT oil on carnivore, right? There are mechanisms behind what we do. Unless you're just in it to identify with the word carnivore, you should think about, okay, why does this work? It's cutting out anti-nutrients and things that can irritate our central nervous systems and our gut and immune system. So salicylates are one of those things. And if you're using pure C8 MCT oil without the C10, you don't have any salicylates. So I have a dairy-free ice cream, carnivore ice cream recipe. And if you need to eat out of surplus, that's pretty much the best thing. That or the brownies. And the brownies I created more recently after I had tried this Equip protein powder. And I would love to be affiliated with them, but I guess they're so popular that they're not even taking affiliates right now. It's the best protein powder I've ever had. I'm not a big fan of whey protein powder. And so this is pure beef isolate protein. They have strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. And I just make that with egg yolks and some beef suet. I really like anything that I create. I have nutrition in mind first. It's not just to mimic a taste, which that's what I did with keto. It was like, how can I just take a bunch of fat and make it taste a certain way? With carnivore, it's completely different. So I enjoy sweet treats from time to time. And so I make these brownies with egg yolks, beef suet, which is loaded with stearic acid. And it's just super rich using suet instead of butter for the chocolate version. And a pinch of baking soda. And that's literally it. It's so simple. And it's like the perfect chewy brownie. For anyone who loves the end pieces and the corner pieces of the brownies, you have to try these. Like, they're perfect. So that went so well. So I tried the vanilla protein powder, and I make those with butter. And I just burn the butter a little bit, not actually burn, but it's, burnt butter where it's a little more cooked and golden, and it has a very distinct flavor. So those are the blondies that I created. And like I said, I eat these every day while I'm on this high protein experiment where I'm losing a ton of fat eating protein ice cream and carnivore brownies. And these are not fat void foods. These are not nutrition void foods. This is totally different than filling up on a salad for a feeling of volume because you're trying to lose weight. I'm actually giving myself nutrients. I'm not afraid of that fat. If I don't eat enough fat, I actually don't burn fat as quickly. So, they're just super delicious. And I actually like the blondies now even more. And they're very hard to not eat the whole serving, but that's not even a bad thing. So it really works out.
That's awesome. I can't wait to try some of those. And thank you for sharing those. I'll certainly link to your Instagram so folks can go check that out. This has been an absolute pleasure, Rebekah. Thank you so much for sharing more of your story and some of your recent progress. It's been really inspiring, and I think will be helpful for people too. Where can people find out more about you? And I'll provide links in the show notes and at carnivorecast.com.
Thanks, Scott. You can find me on Instagram. I'm most active there, and my email is on there, and all of my other links are on there too. So Instagram at Tailored Keto Health. My name's not Taylor, it's Rebekah. And yeah, I'm there. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebekah. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CarnivoreCast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.